It's Christmas. What's up, Menace soldiers? I'm the Alliance and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be doing the review for Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. This one's going to be fun. Now before I begin, as I said in my previous reviews, I recommend checking those videos out first, then coming back and checking out this one, for I raise arguments from those videos in this one. Now you don't have to, but I would recommend it. Also, just like those other videos, this video will be containing spoilers for this film. And if you enjoy this video, please consider helping out the channel by liking, subscribing, turn notifications, maybe even share the video. That'd be awesome. Don't have to, but that'd be really cool of you. Now with all that out of the way, let's begin. Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi was released on December 15th, 2017, and much like The Force Awakens, it seemed to be liked by pretty much everyone at first. However, just like The Force Awakens, it quickly became disliked for a multitude of reasons. So I just want to be clear here before I get too far into the video, this is not going to be like a 20-minute video of me just trashing on this film, because there are some good aspects to this film. However, I will not be holding back when I see something stupid. So, this will be fun. I'm going to try my best to give a full, comprehensive review just like I did for the previous Star Wars movies. So with that said, we're asked the question, is Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi good? Is it bad? Or is it just okay? Let's check it out. Part 1. The Evacuation. Shortly after the destruction of Starkiller Base in Episode 7, General Leia Organa leads the evacuation of the Resistance forces from Dakar. Against Leia's orders, Poe Dameron leads a costly counterattack that destroys a First Order dreadnought. However, the Resistance lose a lot of people. Aboard the First Order ship, a hologram of Snoke reprimands Hux for failing to stop the evacuation. Snoke then notes that in spite of Kylo killing his father, he is still weak. Meanwhile, Finn wakes up from his coma after a lightsaber fight with Kylo. Poe finds him and Finn asks, "Where's Rey?" I think the beginning of this part is actually pretty good. It's cool to see Poe in action as he pulls some crazy maneuvers in order to destroy the dreadnought. It proves the idea that one man really can make a difference, and I like that. But with that said, Poe did kind of get everyone killed. And he doesn't really even get in trouble for it. He just kind of gets like a little slap on the wrist. Actually, he gets a slap in the face. But he probably should have been locked away. This bombing scene has received a lot of flack from fans, but I don't really mind it. I just figured that the bombs started falling while they were in the ship's gravity field, so once they left the gravity field, they continued in the direction they were free falling. So I don't really see any real issue with this scene. If you ask me, the biggest issue I have is how the heck she was actually able to grab that detonator like that. So I mentioned this in my Episode 7 review, and I feel like the true fault actually lies with this film, because how is Finn walking? We just watched his spine get sliced by Kylo. Now the theory is that Poe's jacket was actually laced with some type of protective materials or something like that. I mean, honestly, it almost seemed like Finn woke up because Rian Johnson didn't really care about the previous established canon, which is actually a trend for this film. So we're gonna start a counter right here in the corner, and every time that we see a continuity breaking thing, we're gonna list it. So for this first part of the film, I think it's actually okay. Sure, there are some BS moments, but it does a good job of bringing us back into the story after Episode 7. So I have to give it credit for that, especially since the rest of the movie is alright. Part 2. Luke Skywalker. Rey hands Luke his lightsaber, but he tosses it over his shoulder. She tells him that Leia sent her to find him. He then asks Chewie where Han is. Back with the Resistance, Leia demotes Poe as a result of his actions with the Dreadnought. Moments later, the First Order ship catches up to the Resistance after tracking them through hyperspace. Kylo Ren flies in his own TIE fighter and prepares to launch a killing strike against the Resistance leaders, but he pulls back the attack after sensing Leia on board. However, his wingmen open fire, causing a blast that sucks the rebel leaders into space to their deaths. But Leia manages to pull herself back to the ship using the Force, but the stress of the action causes her to go unconscious. Back on Ahch-To, Luke senses Rey's power and eventually agrees to give her lessons in the way of the Jedi and why it must end. So right off the bat, before we get too much further into this review, for those of you who have seen my videos on The Last Jedi before, you would already know that I am very much against the portrayal of Luke Skywalker in this film. And while I'm fine with trying new things, I just really don't like the treatment of Luke in this movie. Now, I'm not going to attack Rian Johnson like some of the other Last Jedi reviews out there, but I honestly just don't think that Rian Johnson fully understood the character of Luke, and it shows. I know that Luke is a broken man, and this scene made me chuckle at first when I first saw it. But now, it ultimately kind of feels like a middle finger to Star Wars fans, for this lightsaber has been around for years. It almost represents the Star Wars universe in its significance. So when Luke takes this legendary lightsaber and just kind of tosses it aside, instead of being a cheeky gag while also subtly hinting towards this film not being what you think it's going to be, this scene comes off feeling as though it doesn't care about the fans. And that's not good. Now, to fix the scene while still trying to convey the message for the story, I would have had Luke actually just push the lightsaber back towards Rey. In his eyes, we could see the intrigue about how this random girl found it, but he ultimately shakes it off, then walks away. This way, you can convey that Luke is still broken while still respecting the lightsaber and what it represents. The introduction of Snoke in this film is super menacing. I really hope this movie doesn't waste him. Here's another example of Rian not respecting previous canon. Kylo's scar was actually moved from where it was in The Force Awakens. His reason for changing it is because it looked goofy. But Rian, you don't do that stuff with the Star Wars universe. I mean, sure, if this was a Fast and Furious movie or like a Pirates of the Caribbean movie, I wouldn't care. I wouldn't even bat an eye. But this is Star Wars. You have to respect the canon placed in front of you. You can't just reverse previous continuity just because you feel like doing that. You can't do that.
I will never train another generation of Jedi. I came to this island to die.
Luke, if you came to that island to die and not to be found by anyone, why'd you leave a map? This scene with Kylo potentially about to kill his mother, but he ultimately decides not to, is possibly the strongest moment out of this entire sequel trilogy so far. It shows that Kylo Ren, deep down, is still Ben Solo, and that possibly he could be redeemed later on, so I like that. So now let's talk about the Superman Leia scene. I know everyone seems to hate it, but for me, I don't really mind it. I mean, sure, it looks kind of funny, but in desperate situations, even people in real life can have like superhuman feats. So why couldn't someone who is Force sensitive also do something like that, but with the Force? I mean, I know that's a long shot, but it's probably the best explanation we're gonna get from this scene, so I think it's fine. The rest of this part is pretty decent though, so let's move on to the notorious next part. Part 3. Canto Bight. With Leia out of commission, Vice Admiral Holdo assumes command of the Resistance. Meanwhile, Finn attempts to hop on an escape pod, however he is stopped by Rose Tycho. Finn notes that the First Order is tracking them through hyperspace, and they can't make another jump because they're dangerously low on fuel, so the First Order will find them anyway. They contact Maz Kanata, who explains that the Master Codebreaker could help them dismantle the Supremacy's tracker. Rey is able to see visions and manipulate small pebbles as she achieves balance. However, she soon sees a vision of herself being pulled towards a dark pit, with Luke trying to break her out of it. The pit spews water and snaps Rey out of her vision, and Luke explains that she saw the dark side of the Force. Finn, Rose, and BB-8 arrive at the casino planet of Canto Bight. Finn is impressed by the casino, however, Rose hates it. They are soon captured and meet a man named DJ who is able to break them out, and they all escape with DJ on a ship that he borrowed. I've mentioned this in a previous video, so if you want to check that out, I'll leave a link to that in the description below. But why is this new trilogy afraid to give its females faults? I mean, even when the female is clearly in the wrong, they somehow spin the narrative to make it seem as though she's not wrong. In fact, she is right the entire time. It's just confusing to me. And this isn't meant to be like a sexist statement or anything. I just think it's actually more sexist to have women portrayed as these, godlike creatures who have no issues than actually have them as real people. So maybe that's just me, but that's how I feel. And if you've seen my previous reviews, I actually praised Leia and Padme for being strong women who aren't always right, for that's what made them good characters to me. We are then introduced to Rose Tycho, who I'm not overly fond of, but I think she, as well as her actress, get way more hate than they deserve. One of my favorite aspects of this film is the bond that forms between Rey and Kylo. I think that it makes the characters feel more real, especially Kylo, because in The Force Awakens, he didn't really have any character development, so it's cool to see him actually getting some. Now we come to the most infamous scene in Star Wars, Canto Bight. Now I could take probably like 10 minutes just destroying this scene, but I'm not going to. I'm actually going to take the high road, and I'll just give my brief thoughts. While I think it's an interesting concept, this scene is a complete waste of time, both for our characters and the story. I talked about the Space Worm in episode 5, and the Rathtar scene in episode 7 feeling like filler to me, but at least both of those scenes had a means to an end. But this entire chunk of movie is just here for SJW reasons. And I really despise that, especially since it doesn't serve the story at all. I'm okay with a movie trying to send like a message about real life or trying to teach me a lesson if it serves the story, but this doesn't. It is a waste of time, and honestly, I'm actually surprised he made it in the film. Part 4, A Familiar Face. Luke mentions that the last time he saw Kylo Ren as a student, he had attempted to kill him by collapsing his HUD on him. However, as Rey and Kylo continue to connect, Kylo tells Rey that Luke saw the power growing inside of him and attempted to kill him. Rey then confronts Luke over what Kylo told him, and Luke explains that he sensed nothing but great darkness in Kylo, with no hope of turning him back. And while Luke managed to stop himself, it was already too late, for Kylo thought that Luke was going to kill him and responded with a counterattack. Rey decides to leave Ahch-To with Chewie and R2. Luke walks by the tree containing sacred Jedi text when a familiar face appears, and it is Yoda. Yoda destroys a tree containing the text with a lightning bolt, to Luke's dismay. Yoda then tells Luke to help Rey before she is also lost to the dark side. Luke considers himself a failure, but in the wise words of Yoda, the greatest teacher failure is. I actually really like the scene where Rey and Luke are discussing the truth of Kylo Ren. For while Ben was being corrupted by Snoke, Luke himself was also being corrupted. And while Luke managed to stop himself, Ben reacted how any of us would react if someone was going to try to kill us. We were going to defend ourselves, and that's just how it goes. Now, while I like the concept of this moment, it still falls short for me because it's just kind of like a big misunderstanding type of situation. And I think that's what bothers me the most about this scene, is because we think the reason why Kylo turned to the dark side was probably because of a big massive moment like Anakin had. But instead, it's just kind of because Luke made an oopsie. And as I stated, the whole theme of him turning to the dark side just kind of falls short now because his turn was a misunderstanding and it could have been solved if Luke just kind of talked a little faster in the situation. Ben, are you okay? Sorry, I thought I saw someone walk into your hut. I was just making sure you're safe, so that's all. I'll catch you later. Sleep tight, sweet prince. So let's talk about that Yoda scene. I love that little guy. It's awesome to see him return, but that puppet is too much a puppet. Now I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me here, but I actually prefer the CGI Yoda. I mean, the puppet worked great in the older films, but in this one, it's clearly fake and it kind of takes you out of the movie. Also, since when can Force Ghosts summon lightning like Thor? And if they can summon lightning like that, why don't they all just kind of show up where Snoke is and just hit him with lightning? I think we're supposed to assume that the Force Ghosts can only appear at certain times, but why? A little explanation would go a long way. If they even just said like, if the dark side is clouding somewhere too much, we just can't show up. Maybe that's an example of what they could do, but they don't really explain why they can't show up, so why can't they? Still, even with the issues of this part, it's got some really good scenes, and I like that it's like overall a good teaching moment for Luke. Part 5, The Red Herring. Finn, Rose, and DJ make it to the First Order ship. Unfortunately, they are captured by Captain Phasma and her goons. It's soon revealed that DJ had betrayed Finn and Rose for money. And around the same time, Rey arrives on the Supremacy and is taken prisoner by Kylo Ren. Holdo starts to set in motion plans to evacuate the Resistance ship to a nearby Resistance stronghold on the planet Krayt. Poe believes she is doing something wrong and he attempts to stage a mutiny. However, before his plans can go into effect, Leia stops him. Kylo brings Rey before Snoke. Snoke reveals that he created the connection between Rey and Kylo in an attempt to destroy Luke. Snoke attempts to get Kylo to kill Rey with his lightsaber, but Kylo uses Luke's lightsaber instead to impale Snoke and cut him in half. Rey and Kylo then join forces to fight Snoke's soldiers, and after their victory, Kylo tries to get Rey to join him, but she refuses and tries to get him to join her. They both soon fight over Luke's lightsaber, causing the hilt to explode. Rey leaves to rejoin the Resistance, while Kylo assumes the role as the new Supreme Leader. As the Resistance fighters are making their way to Krayt, Hux's men start to fire upon the transports, killing heavy numbers of the Resistance. Seeing no other option, Holdo sacrifices herself and rams her ship at light speed into the Supremacy, splitting it in two and destroying other nearby ships. And the explosion allows Finn, Rose, and BB-8 to escape the broken Supremacy and rejoin the Resistance on Krayt. So as I stated earlier, by this part in the film, I've already checked out of Finn and Rose's story, so I'm actually not even going to talk about their non-story. Also, like I mentioned earlier, Holdo is very much in the wrong, yet this scene paints it out as if she is all-knowing the entire time, and Poe was an idiot for believing that she was just going to get them all killed, even though all she had to do was tell him the plan, and this entire subplot could just be taken care of, just like that, but she didn't. and she's viewed as in the right, and Poe is in the wrong, and Star Wars sequel trilogy, my friends. Now we come to the A plot of the film, the plot we actually all care about, with Rey and Kylo going to talk to Snoke. Honestly, I have to hand it to Rey in this scene. She's facing down arguably the strongest Force user she's ever met, and she's standing tall and confident. It makes her feel like less of a Mary Sue, and as someone who actually is confident in themselves, even if they know they're going against a Force they cannot take on, she's not giving up, and I think that's actually a really cool quality to see her have. So for me, I kind of have a good/bad vibe about this whole scene. For while I have to give the film credit for having the gall to actually kill off Snoke, I also hate it because Snoke was never utilized to his full potential on screen. Also, I know the throne room fight slowed down is a total mess, but if you watch it in real time, it's actually incredibly enjoyable. And I think it's pretty cool to see Rey and Kylo join forces, so I can kind of let the bad part of this scene go, because it is ultimately a pretty cool scene. Okay, I know this scene breaks established canon, but honestly, I think it's awesome. Should have been Leia, but I still think it's really good. Part 6. Goodbye. Kylo and Hux lead gigantic walkers to the Resistance stronghold, armed with a battering ram cannon that will obliterate the entrance. Poe leads Finn, Rose, and a few others on speeders to fight back. Finn attempts to sacrifice himself and destroy the cannon, however Rose stops him. The First Order fires their cannon onto the stronghold. Our heroes appear helpless, with most of their comrades dead and their own doom approaching. Then all of a sudden, Luke Skywalker arrives and goes out to face the First Order. Kylo orders the soldiers to fire everything upon Luke, and even after an insane amount of firepower bombarding Luke, he survives. Poe realizes Luke is distracting the villains to allow them time to escape. Kylo goes down to face Luke himself, however, it's soon revealed that Luke is a Force projection. While his physical body is still on Ahch-To, Luke tells Kylo that he will not be the Last Jedi. As Rey uses the Force to clear the way for her allies and the heroes escape on board the Falcon. Back on Ahch-To, Luke becomes one with the Force. Rey tells Leia that she can no longer sense Luke, and she asks what will become of the Resistance now. And Leia tells her they have what they need to rebuild. The end. So, I like Finn. I don't want to see him die. I liked him more in The Force Awakens, but overall, he's a decent character. I don't necessarily want to see him die, but if they were going to kill him off, this scene should have been it. And this scene alone creates two massive plot holes. First, how exactly did Rose manage to catch back up with Finn? And second, how did Finn actually get her back to the bunker without getting shot by one of the walkers? Let's throw 2 more points on the counter. Man, the part where Luke and Leia meet again after so long, it's definitely one of the biggest highlights of this film, and it's relatively a small scene. I just wish Han was there to kind of share the time with them. Also, I didn't really mention this in the beginning of this review, but I kind of feel like I should say something about it. They completely murdered Hux's character in this. In episode 7, Hux was at least competent, but in this film, every time he shows up, I feel like there should be like a laugh track or something behind it.
Win. Have no ruler. Don't get distracted. Our goal. Supremely.
And while it's funny, it also sucks because he's supposed to be like our new Tarkin-esque character, and he's just kind of like a new Jar Jar. But I guess that's an argument that could be raised about this entire trilogy. We're not really afraid of any of our villains. Snoke was kind of scary, but that issue is solved, so yeah. Not to mention the fact that Phasma's gone after doing nothing, so we're left with Kylo and Hux, and while Kylo is handled much better in this film compared to episode 7, he still doesn't compare to the villainous prowess of Darth Vader, and that's unfortunate. So for the final fight between Kylo and Luke, while I think it's cool that Luke decided to teach his former apprentice one final lesson, I still honestly wish that Luke actually went in person to fight Kylo. Also, his lightsaber should have been his iconic green one. Maybe that's just me. but that's just how I feel. Now for the ending, I think it ends a little too happy. Like an army of hundreds of rebels had just died, and they're all just kind of standing around casually talking. I mean, I'm sure they're happy to be alive, but all their allies just died. The movie should be trying to send us a somber ending, but instead we leave this film confused by how we're supposed to feel. We're supposed to feel as if there's a sense of hope, but there's not really any confirmation that there is going to be hope. So everyone should be sad. I don't know. Like I said, it's confusing, and that's not good. So now we come to the conclusion of this film. I think it's a very, very ambitious film with some of the biggest twists in cinema history. But with that said, that doesn't mean the twists and turns are always warranted. There's just, honestly, a lot of missed opportunities. My biggest complaint with this film mostly comes down to its direction. It feels like a part 1 to its own story rather than a part 2 to the trilogy. Especially since all of our characters are pretty much exactly where they left off in The Force Awakens anyways. And if your characters aren't going to evolve and grow, you're just wasting your time crafting a story. Now, I don't think Rian Johnson is a horrible director or writer. I just don't think this was a story for him. I think if The Last Jedi was a Star Wars spin-off film, where it had new characters, still the same type of premise, but it wasn't actually like episode 8, people would have liked this film more. But his choice to subvert expectations over telling a cohesive story that celebrates its source material, it was just a bad call. So all in all, is Star Wars Episode 8 The Last Jedi a bad movie? No. I think as a standalone film, it's actually quite good. But as a Star Wars movie, it's pretty disappointing. So while The Last Jedi is a good movie, it's honestly a bad Star Wars movie. And that is my review for Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. How do you guys feel about this movie? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad? What are the best things in it? What are the worst things in it? Let me know in the comments below. Please remember to like, subscribe, and turn notifications for more videos. And until next time, guys, I'll catch you later. Peace.